So today we're going to be talking about one of the best ways and one of the easiest ways to catch bass in the springtime, especially around the spawn. Usually that's around the month of April, May. This is one of those techniques. If you're going fishing, no matter where you're going, you better have a wacky worm tied on of some form. So today what I've got is my setup, what I prefer, what I like, and what I would recommend, whether you're a beginner or an expert out there on the tournament trails. So what I mean by a wacky worm is any type of straight tail worm. And the whole key to it is, instead of a Texas rig where it's rigged in the nose, rigged weedless or whatever, or a jig head, the big key here is you're hooking your bait in the middle of your worm, which gives it a unique action, something different than a Texas rig or something that's rigged like that. It gives it that wacky type of action. And I remember the first few times I saw this, as a beginner angler, you're like, well, that's really kind of a dumb looking presentation. It doesn't look like it's very natural. But when you see this thing in the water and actually see how it acts, it looks very, very natural to the fish. And just by it being in the water and it falling, that's what creates the strikes. And that's what makes it so easy for a beginner as well. So when I'm talking about easy to fish, when this thing hits the water, it's not like you have to work this thing to catch fish. The whole way that this thing catches fish is by it just falling, and it looks natural in the water. It literally will hit the water, and with your hook being in the middle, it creates just enough weight, but the ends of it will sit there and swim back and forth in the water. And it literally looks just like, I grew up fishing live bait, fishing live night crawlers. If you ever catch an earthworm or night crawler, throw it in the water sometime and watch what it looks like. And it literally looks just like a wacky worm. And that is a deadly way to catch bass. And it's one of those things that when there's fish up shallow, when they're around a bed, when they're guarding fry, this is a technique that will catch them. And it's one of my most favorite ways. So what do I mean by that? First and foremost, let's look at the hook. The hook's probably a huge part of this. And what I've got here, this is a trocar. This is a weedless finesse hook. I prefer a number 1 or number 2 size, depending on your bait. What you're doing is basically, and you don't have to have all this special stuff. You can just take your straight tail worm, hook it in the middle like that, and it works great. A lot of times you can be using some straight tail worms and it tears up the ends. Save them for a wacky rig and they work great like that as well. So here's kind of the 3 ways that I do it and what I prefer. So the hooks I prefer are the trocar, the weedless finesse hook in either a number 1, number 2. But the big thing is just kind of matching the hook to the size of your bait. A bigger Cinco style bait, I'm going to use a number 1. A smaller bait, a number 2, and even maybe something small and more finessey, even a smaller 3 or 4 size hook. But this one, what I like about it is it's weedless, so it's got the little weed guard on there, so it'll help slide over a tree branch or vegetation. So it keeps it a little more weedless, so hang-ups aren't as bad. But you can actually take and cut these weed guards off, or they make a non-weedless version that you can use more in open water that works great as well. So the other big thing is how you hook this thing in the middle. Like I said, you can just take a worm and hook it through the middle like so. And what that's going to do, it's great, but it will actually tear, and eventually you'll lose a lot of worms that way. What I prefer, or actually probably the one that's been around the longest, is they have a wacky tool like this. And it'll have these little rubber O-rings on here, and it's actually a pretty cool concept. You just take your worm, put it in the end, and you basically want to figure out the middle point on this. I've actually got another ring on here already, but I'm going to just show you because this pink works great. Kind of find the center. A lot of times it's the egg sac on some of these, but you just take your tool, slide that on there like so, and that O-ring will sit on there. And instead of hooking it just through the bait, that O-ring will create a way to keep from tearing your bait as bad. But what I prefer is this little crossover ring here. They come in this neat little packet. They come in some different sizes. I believe this is the 5mm, either the 4mm or 5mm is what I prefer. And these things kind of lock on there. But what they have is they have cool little holes, so you can rig it wacky style, or you can rig it Nico style, which is more of a horizontal rig. So it's really a cool way. You just take your hook, run it through that little hole, and that keeps your hook nice and exposed. This ring, it doesn't slide at all, so really gives you the best bang for your buck. You're gonna save more worms this way. They don't tear up as bad, and your hook's nice and open and exposed there for best hookup ratios there. So it works out really well. So those are the 3 ways, but let me show you how to work this little ring as well. So what you do here, you take one of these little rings like so, and it's got this tool. Take this and slide it up on the tool like so, and basically you're going to take your worm, so you slide it down in there, and then you basically work this down on there, and that's what it does. It gets on there like that and gives you a perfect spot to hook your bait. So like on this one, I have a clear one, so obviously if you want to be more, you know, make it a little more not obvious, they have clear ones. They have different colors. They have green ones, different colors to match the baits that you're fishing. So obviously I put 2 on here just because I wanted to show you on the pink. You only need to put 1 on there. I just was doing that just to show you just how they actually work. But you know, they'll slide off, and you know, these things will work for quite a while. But there it is. That's the little ring on there. Just put your hook on there and you're good to go. Like I said, what the different baits for a wacky worm are any kind of straight tail worm, but obviously the most popular by far, I wish I had a penny for every one of these sold, is just the old Yamamoto Senko, 5-inch Senko, 4-inch Senko, something like that. You got the Bass Pro Shop Sticko. You know, you've got the Berkeley General, Zoom's finesse worms, Zoom trick worms. You know, anything that's a straight tail worm will work as a great wacky worm type of bait. Colors, they're the other big deal. You know, I always tell people it doesn't matter what kind of bait you're fishing, but especially in soft plastics, keep it simple. Your watermelon reds, your green pumpkins, you can't go wrong. Obviously, if you're down south or up north and you're in your tannic waters, blackish waters, black and blue, dirtier water, something like that. But then the other one, this is the one area of worms where pink is a pretty valuable color. Why? Because you're catching big spawning females and it's during the spawn. No, not really. It's just the pink really shows up well in the water. You can see it from a long ways, and so can the fish, especially on a stained water, cloudy conditions. A pink is a great time. So if you want to add pink to your arsenal, this is the time of year and the type of baits to use it for some really good results as well. So, okay, so here we go. We take it. I'm just going to use this pink one because it works out really well. You know, on a wacky rig, the big key is rigging your worm crossways like that, so it actually shakes good in the water. So that's the big key. So when it hits the water, it's a very subtle, just the weight of the hook is going to pull it down and cause these ends to shake a little bit. But then when you pull it, 9 times out of 10, your bite is going to come on that initial fall into the water by the strike zone. You're going to throw to the strike zone and literally let it fall. Or you can throw past the strike zone, reel it right up to it, kill it, and let it fall. And on that initial fall is when you're going to get that strike. But what you can also do is, you know, if you want to cover water with it, what I like to do is, let's say there's some stumps. And if I throw past some stumps, I throw to the farthest stump, get by it, work that, what I'll do is I'll let it hit the water, sink 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, usually to the depth of water I'm fishing. Usually this is going to be in 1 to 5 foot of water. So obviously the shallower you're fishing, the less you have to let it sit. If you're in 5, you know, count to 5. And typically it's going to sink, hit the bottom. And what I'm going to do is lift my rod tip up. And a lot of times they're just going to be swimming with it. And then what I'll do is I'll shake it and kind of reel it, kind of make a swimming action out of it. And you will get bit that way sometimes, but not very often. And then I'll reel it up to the next target. Let's say there's another stump. I'll kill it next to that stump and kind of repeat that process. Or if nothing else, all you got to do is throw this thing out there to where there potentially can be a bass. Just throw it out there and let it sink. And that's what's so great about, for beginners, you know, you might have somebody, especially in open water, in a pond, an area with some vegetation, where that open water, just throw it out there and tell a beginner, count 1/1000 to 5 and reel it in and make another cast. So you don't have to be an expert at working a bait to have good results catching fish with this bait. So that's how you fish a wacky worm. So let's look at the setup. For me, most of the time you fish a wacky worm, you're fishing, it's a pretty light bait. Most people will fish it on a spinning setup. But the neat thing is, for a beginner, you can use a push button. A spin casting rod and reel, it works great for that. Spinning rod's the most common. Even if you're a person that loves a casting rod, you can do it that way as well, especially on the heavier setups. But spinning rod's the most common. This is the Cast King Speed Demon Pro. This is a 7-foot shaky head rod. It's great for the wacky worms as well. Just 7 foot, good medium action rod. 7.2, somewhere in there. Just something that's got a good enough soft tip where you can throw this thing, load it up, and make a good cast with it. But you want a good backbone to it, to where you can get a good hook set and fight those fish that are in heavy cover. Line wise, I've got this on 20-pound Cast King braid, paired up with this is a 12-pound Gamma fluorocarbon leader. That's just what I prefer. You can just throw it on fluorocarbon, mono, whatever. It works well with any of them, but a 10 to 15 pound line is good, but I prefer 12 to 14 pound Gamma fluorocarbon. So, that's the rod that I use. Reel wise, this is the Cast King Speed Demon Elite. It's a 7:4-to-1 gear ratio reel in a 3000 size, so a 3000 to 2500 size. Whatever you would pair it up with 10 to 15 pound line. I like this one because it's a 7:4-to-1 gear ratio reel. So a lot of times when I throw that bait out there into a certain area, and if I don't get a bite, I can reel it in. A faster gear ratio reel allows me to spend less time winding a bait in to make another cast. Or if a big fish bites it, a lot of times they'll bite it and come swimming right at you. A high-speed reel allows you to take up more line and catch up with those big fish as well. So, just get you a good rod and reel that you're comfortable with, and get out there, cover a lot of water, put this place where the fish live, and you're going to have some great fishing with the wacky rig. So here we are, we're down at the pond, but my pond is super low, so the fish are really skittish. They probably should be spawning right now. So, you want to approach it being very stealthy. The fish are, when it's real calm like this, it's, shallow and clear, the fish are pretty spooky, but I can see some down here. So we just fire that thing out there, and it's just like that thing fell out of the tree. Very, very natural. And I just shake it a little bit. I can swim it up there. I can see one right there. Oh, did he get it? He got it. He got it. Not a very big one, but obviously we need to do some fish management in my pond. That'll be a whole nother video, but little guy there. So much for being stealthy now. You can see I'm standing down at the edge of my pond, and my pond should be all the way up here, and it's springtime. So we need some rain here in Kansas if somebody can send some rain this way. But got a little. It's a great bait to throw when there's a lot of vegetation in the water because it's pretty weedless, but you can just throw it along the edges like that. And with my pond having a lot of vegetation in it, I want to try to keep it off the bottom because we got a lot of slime in here. I'm just kind of working that thing, twitching it, and then let it just pause for a second. There was a fish that just waked up there, so I'm guessing that's maybe one spawning right there. But this right here, not the best day for these fish to be eating a spinner bait or a chatterbait or something like that. Fish are pretty spooky and, pretty, not really wanting to chase a bait. You wouldn't determine this to be a great day for a lot of moving baits, but it's a great day for these kind of baits. But even on a day when it is windy, they're going to eat this bait as well. So it's such an effective bait to fish anytime the fish are shallow.